Joe Wicks and I, we go way back.
Welcome back to the Body Coach TV.
My name's Joe Wicks and this is a 15-minute gentle beginner cardio workout.
And yes, he made more money than me, he was definitely more famous than me, he was held in public regard much higher than me, but some of the things he said just never really quite added up. And I've been sent one of his videos, and you know what, a younger version of myself would have been like, this guy's a bell end, you know. But I'm going to try to be constructive, try. So let's get into it.
Right, time for an update on my sugar-free challenge, which I've been on now for 3 weeks.
I'm going to start this from the off, and this is going to trigger people. Sugar is not bad for you. It's bad for your teeth. It's more of a concern with the dentist than your doctor. For instance, what we need before we've even watched any of this is context. So, super athletic, person that trains a lot, good body composition, whether it's having some sugar in the evenings, whether it's through sweets, candy, or whether it's having sweets before playing a game of rugby or soccer, football, whatever. Within that context, there's quite literally nothing better. People seem to conflate the difference between, hey, being obese, bad for you. We know that. Being sleep deprived for a long time is bad for you. Sugar can be a contributing factor to people being overweight, but on its own,
what started out as a 7-day challenge for myself personally to cut out all refined sugars and natural sugars just for 7 days.
To cut out all refined sugars and natural sugars. Straight away we come into our first problem. Now, very, very quickly, there are 3 ways we can make people healthier. We can get them to eat better quality foods, that's 1. We can get them to eat less if they're overweight, that's 2. And we can improve their levels of cardiovascular fitness. As a coach and a part-time YouTuber, I can actually use any of those levers to improve someone's diet. So if you've got like a really fat auntie, she might just not like eating healthy foods. But if we can get her exercising, going for a jog and just eating less, whether it's intermittent fasting or whatever, we can drastically improve the quality of her life and her levels of health without her having to go nail down 5 bits of fruit and veg a day. So let's just understand that from the off. Refined sugar is just a very easy place for us to go in someone's diet. Because imagine it this way, let's just flip everything on its head. If I said today, I'm going to give you a US dollar for every calorie you could consume, you're not going to reach for a bag of carrots. You're going to go, get the Haribo, brother. Get the fucking Coke. Get the Coke. What? Now, natural sugars. This is, again, why I have a problem with a lot of fitness plebs being like, yeah, just give up carbs. You know, if you can give up carbs. Hold on, brother. There are some carbs that are great. For instance, fruits. For instance, vegetables. Quite literally, if we were going to put a piece of broccoli into a macronutrient cohort, it would have to go within carbohydrates. Fiber, starch, anyway. So natural sugars, you're taking fruit out of the equation. And fruit can be a very, very good thing. For instance, here's one straight off the top. Those of my clients over the years that like to eat hedonic foods in the evening, like chocolate or whatever, I actually sometimes said, cool, you can eat whatever you want, but you have to have a piece of fruit before it. So if they did tuck into a biscuit or whatever and they had to have an apple before, they're getting more nutrition, more dense foods in, more of something that fills you up, and they still get to have their hobnob, rich tea, whatever come the end of it. So the second someone brings natural sugars into the fray, you're like, removing fruit from someone's diet, I'm not sure that makes it better.
Has really changed my life in so many ways. I'm going to share what I've learned, the impact it's had on me, and give you a little update on what's going on because...
What is the top off? Look, Joe, I've come at you for years for having some pseudo opinions. I don't know if you've spent the afternoon with Eddie Abbew or something. And again, your heart's in the right place, I get it. But if you were to find the most evil people in history, guess what? They were all there thinking they were doing something good. And by the way, I must say, you're turning into a bit of a silver fox. So let's remove the pseudo-nutritional bollocks out of the equation. You're looking good, brother. That little grey bit in the beard, the hairline looking strong. There's, you know, an element of me tearing down the nutritional BS, but maybe there's an element of jealousy because you're looking good.
I was so dependent on sugar. I was binging on it, whether it was fruit.
I was so dependent on sugar. Your words, not mine. Whether it was fruit, honey,
refined sugars from things like,
refined sugars from cakes, pastries. Okay, arguably, if we look at cakes and pastries and their macronutrient constituents, we could probably say they're more fats. But anyway, you've said and alluded to the fact that you're addicted to sugar, but you didn't get it from sugar. So if you had an addiction to sugar, why wouldn't you get it in its purest form? If sugar is the culprit here, why would you go to fruit to get it? That makes no sense. If sugar was truly addictive and had the properties that you said, you would be flipping, sneaking in the kitchen, getting getting the bag of Tate and Lyle out and going straight to the source. Because guess what? When people have a cocaine problem, they don't go, oh, I love a cocoa leaf. They want cocaine.
Cakes, pastries, cookies, donuts.
Cookies, donuts, chocolate. Again, now that's a realm of carbohydrates and fats. And keep in mind, if you're going to remove sugar and carbohydrates from your diet, you're going to replace them with fats in the first place anyway.
Chocolate, ice cream, fizzy drinks, all these things that I really need to just get out of my system. And it was difficult at first. The first few days I had headaches.
For a start, I'm no expert in eating disorders, but this just sounds like binge and restrict. And for years, there are people that are on or off. And the one thing they actually need is balance and not to feel guilt or shame for eating these things. And unfortunately, being in a position where you go, I've given up these things and I feel amazing, this doesn't make people that enjoy these foods feel that good. And also, have you ever noticed that all your friends in the best shape, although genetics plays a big part, they're just sensible with the amount. They have a little bit of chocolate. I eat chocolate almost every day and I'm feeling good. Probably the testosterone, granted, 1-1.
A bit grumpy, a bit irritable. But when you persevere and you push through that, every day you get a little bit more clarity. I've now been on holiday, I've been around ice creams and fizzy drinks, I've been through the airport, all the ultra processed food, and ultimately in looking back in hindsight, it was in my head a sugar-free challenge.
I have a bit of a problem here with the idea of processed foods being bad and ultra processed foods being bad, because there are some things. Let's look at oats. There are quite a lot of studies out there about the health benefits of oats. This has been well studied for a long period of time. Yet people just say oats are bad because oats are cereal and cereal was made by big food to keep you fat.
But really, it encompasses everything. It was an ultra-processed food-free challenge. And, you know, people say, you know, why can't you just have it in moderation? It's about choice, it's about willpower, it's about having discipline. I wish I could feel like that and wish I could actually say, yeah, I agree, I can do that. But I just can't. I really, really find it difficult. I have done since I was a child, growing up in the 80s, I'm going to say a 90% ultra-processed food diet. And it's just been in me from that age. And so, yeah, I really depend on it. It helps when I'm feeling stressed. It helps with my mood. You know, it basically, it's the thing I turn to. It's my addiction, if you like. So what's happened is, went through the 7 days, was feeling really good. And I thought, why go and reward myself and eat more ultra-processed food? So I just continued it. And I feel so much better for it. You know, I really, really do. And I actually have so much more, I suppose, willpower, but also ability to like see the world and see the environment I'm living in and really analyse it and zoom out and go, wow, like I'm getting targeted with sugar from the second I wake up. You know, an ultra-processed food, from the minute I wake up to the minute I get home, whether you're going into London on the train, whether you're getting petrol at a petrol station, you're going through an airport, hospitals, you know, Legoland, Chesterton, Thorpe Park, farms, soft plays. It's like everywhere you go is there. And, you know, unless you're prepared, we end up eating it and it ends up making us feel shit, and the cycle continues and it's really difficult.
I think this can be portrayed into a more malice light than it really is. So sugar sits into often a lot of categories of food that are hedonic. We derive pleasure from them and we want pleasure from them, not such nutrition. You know, the brain gets very excited to get a dump of calories because, considering, just to remind you, you and I and him, we're not broken by design. If anything, we're the complete opposite. For the majority of human existence, food has been scarce. There's not been a lot of it. So it only makes sense that when our palates get a taste of energy, which has been so finite throughout all of our time as existence, our brain gets excited. Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, etc. Don't even know if you get oxytocin from food, but you do now. So yes, people are gaming into that, because if you were to leave apples at the tube station, people aren't going to eat them. But if it's a Trek bar or something else that's going to give you that hedonic pick-me-up, it is. Not to mention shelf life and all the other things. And this is just basic capitalism. And the very thing, Joe, that you're having a go at here, being capitalism and having products and, you know, shops wanting to make money, so they need products that people buy so that shops can pay rent to the landlords that are there. There was a time you were making £1 million a month selling a PDF to people to get them to jump around their front room. So the very same system in which you're trying to tear down for putting sugar in front of you is the very same system that you had to generate millions of pounds selling people a file.
What's happened is, I'm now able to see this from a different perspective. The cravings have stopped, the desire to have pudding every single day.
And this is anecdotal. So your anecdotal experiences, that's cool. But you're here saying how reducing sugar and ultra-processed foods in your diet can change your life. And I agree, but you should empower people with knowledge and with facts, with the reality of it. And again, going back to those 3 ways to improve someone's life. You get them to eat less, so you put them in a calorie deficit. You get them to eat better, which often then puts them in a calorie deficit as well, but they can also get more nutrition from food. And you can improve their levels of cardiovascular fitness. We should give people that trifecta of options so they can make the best possible choices themselves. Because for some people, this very part is the hardest part they struggle with. The sugar, the processed foods, maybe it's trauma, maybe it's appetite. The very thing you're saying of going through all that in the 90s, guess what? People are using these foods as coping mechanisms. So don't you think it would be better to empower people and arm them with the very thing that could help them? Nuance, knowledge, evidence, not your anecdotes. Because from your mansion with your beautiful wife, I may add, and your beautiful children, it's very easy, I believe, for you to say these things. But to come out and demonize fruit, natural sugars, and even fizzy drinks, again, you and maybe the Eddie Abbew cohort et al. Point to your Coke Zeros, the sweeteners in there are going to, and I'm pretty sure, again, we've got a lot of evidence, non-nutritive sweetened beverages versus water after a 52-week program. And we see here, participants consuming water maintained a weight loss of 6.1 kilograms over a year versus 7.5 kilograms. So again, when we look back to the trifecta of ways in which we can make people healthier and make them feel better and make them objectively live better, those sweetened Coke Zeros, Diet Cokes, whatever, objectively help people lose weight. So coming here and saying, don't have that's bad for you, don't have anything processed, just drink water, it's counterintuitive to the entire thing. Again, with fruit, I can only guarantee that the more fruit you put into someone's lives, natural sugars, the better that the outcome comes, because we're now getting them to have more nutrients, more fiber, more goodness.
On holiday for a couple of days, there was a breakfast buffet, there was cakes, donuts, pastries, croissants, all that stuff, which is the first stuff I always go to. And I'm always drinking San Pellegrino, lemon Fanta, like cans of Coke. Like, I am that guy, and I've learned that actually I don't need to have that stuff. And every time I make a decision not to, like, you just feel a little bit more empowered, a bit more in control, and you feel that actually I can get through the day without eating this stuff. And what happens is, rather than seeing that as a sacrifice and something you're giving up, when you're not relying on those foods for energy and you're actually eating real food, you realise actually it opens up a whole new world of food that you can actually enjoy and feel good from. Because everyone asks me all the time, what's the best snacks? You know, I need snacks, I need ideas.
And again, when we're looking at things like snacks, and again, when we look at dairy, reduced chances of type 2 diabetes, and there's another plethora of benefits. The actual lactose within that is sugar. We got lactose, we got glucose, we got fructose. I don't even think the majority of people demonizing sugar could even name 5-6 different variants.
Truth is, the best snacks are no snacks, because when you're eating big meals,
the best snacks is no snacks. I'm sorry, but have you ever worked with normal people before, Joe? And again, quick story, I had a client back in the day, and I remember she came into the gym and she said, James, I think we're going to get on because you swear a lot. That's why I continue to swear. She was one of my favourite clients. And when I was doing my consult with her, I said to her, look, just give me a food log and be honest. I said, all I want for you is to be honest, okay? So she sent me the food log and it was honest. I remember going, Jesus Christ, when I saw this food log. I think it was the first actual one I'd ever seen that was honest. And in it, she was going to work all day as a dog trainer and she only had one sandwich, which some people out there could say, oh, it's not very healthy to have a sandwich. And so I'm looking at the amount of food that she's eating when she comes home and binges, and I didn't say, just give up sugar, babe. I didn't say, no snacks are good snacks. I actually said to her, can you make one more sandwich? She goes, what? I've come here to help myself lose fat, not eat more. I said, look, I'm looking at your work day, I'm spotting a trend. I seem to think you're under eating at work and you're binging in the evening. I said, making an extra sandwich isn't going to cost you a huge amount. It's not going to be that much more admin. Just try it out. Next week, food log again. She said, a sandwich at lunchtime, another sandwich at 3 p.m. The amount of food she was having in the evening decreased. We put her in a deficit through giving her more meals. Snacks, again, depending on the person, can be a really important tool to prevent people from going over hungry, binging, because all of us have some good willpower to be on a diet and eat healthy, but that goes out the window when you get really hungry.
Whole foods with protein, fats and carbohydrates, that's your energy.
Okay, so we can have carbohydrates, but we just can't have sugar in that.
And you might have 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day, but you don't need this constant obsession with snacking in between. Same for our kids, right?
It's kind of counterintuitive. And we've seen these waters muddied before where people say, oh, if you skip breakfast, you eat more at lunch. Yes, true. But you still consume less calories through the day to that point. I get it. But snacking or meal frequency, considering we now know that the amount of meals you have in a day isn't influencing the amount of fat you lose, it's the amount of calories in versus calories out. I just don't agree with that as a sentiment. You telling me that maybe having a few chocolate covered rice cakes from Waitrose in between meals isn't going to prevent your chances of overeating?
We've been sort of brainwashed, we've been marketed with offers and deals and all these incredible products that have created to sort of satisfy that need of snacks in between meals and grazing throughout the day. But as human beings, we do not need to eat that way. So it's been life-changing, it's been eye-opening, and it's really set me on a path, I think, to actually having a healthier life, a healthier relationship with these things. Am I ever going to eat sugar again? Of course. I had a couple of cocktails, there's sugar in it. I'm not like zero sugar. I think it's impossible. But all I can say is to anyone out there who struggles with this, who is having a chocolate bar every single day with their lunch, is having a pudding after dinner every single night of their life, and is filling their lunch boxes with ultra-processed foods, that there is an option, there is an alternative, but we cannot wait around for the food system and the food.
Good luck with that. Yeah, so instead of packing a sandwich in your kid's lunchbox, just put in, like a ribeye or a sirloin or an A5 Wagyu. Just put one of those in there a day. Great.
Companies to change what they're doing. They're going to continue to produce this stuff.
So food companies aren't going to change what they're doing because the food companies aren't evil tyrants. They're a product of their audience. Very similar to Eddie Abbew that we've spoken about before. So Eddie used to be very moderate and sensible and used to actually have very good taste take some fat loss. But then he realized that when he went into a supermarket and started screaming at bagels and, wake that fat up. When he started saying that, everyone was like, yeah, cheering him, keep going. So Eddie Abbew isn't actually like that in real life. He's just become the product of what the people want, the same way as these food companies. Do you know what? There's a tone here of, well-meaning, getting people to consume less sugar. We've got a person here that is saying, I haven't had sugar at all, but I feel amazing, but I'm going to go back to having sugar and I had a few cocktails. We need systems that are sustainable. And whether this is a relationship, a diet, and I suppose a diet is your relationship to food, you want to look down the barrel of your protocol and say to yourself, could I do this forever? And if the answer to that is no, well, it's going to be a case of when you give up, not if you give up. That person that's having a chocolate bar a day every day, do you know what I would do? I'd say, could we have a protein bar instead? Maybe like a carb killer from Grenade. Then you get that amount. I've even got one in here. Not a paid price. Every time I want a chocolate bar, I'll just have a Grenade bar. We should be identifying these issues that people have in their life and being like, can we make this better? If you're having a cheese and ham sandwich, could we turn that into a chicken sandwich or a tuna sandwich? If we are eating loads of unhealthy foods in the evening, could we look to low-calorie ice cream instead of just ice cream? Could we look to implementing a piece of fruit before you tuck into the Haribo? There are so many ways that we can implement systems that don't mean people have to banish things. Not to mention, the second you make something forbidden, any of you that are watching this that have got kids, have you ever noticed that if you have a kid and you say, don't go in there, don't go in there, don't go in there, don't go in there, they go in. Whereas if you went, yeah, go in there, or you say, actually, I would love you to go in there, and they won't. The second you make something forbidden in life, people want it more.
We can really, really take control right now which I've been saying for the past 12 years, is to prep like a boss, to get in the kitchen, to create your own food, to take control of the food you're eating. So when you leave the house, if you had a nice big breakfast or you've got your lunch on, you go, you are going to be less likely and more resistant to the food system and the environment we live in. I
agree with that. I actually disagree with almost everything you said up until that point. But I think, do you know what, Joe? Absolutely. And although I've had a pop at you over the years, the fact you got people to cook more, I must say, well done for that, because that is an integral part to it. And having food on you just makes you less inclined to give in to the hunger gremlins. So you can have that.
The more you try and reduce it and cut it out, the harder you see it is and the more challenging. You start to get pissed off. You start to get pissed off by adverts and billboards and meal deals and offers. And
we're going to stop you there, Joe. Video's getting a bit lengthy. But for any of you out there, sugar isn't the problem. You're the problem. Because if you're obese, it's not the sugar's fault. Sure, it's a contributing factor, but it's your fault. And could you do with eating less sugar? Yes, but it's not inherently bad for you. Put it this way, if I came into your life, there are many things that I would change, but I would not put you on a sugar ban. I would not take natural sugars out of your life. I'd go back to the trifecta of 3 things that you can do in your life. Improve your cardiovascular health, eat better quality foods, and reduce the amounts of calories that you're consuming if you're obese. Joe, stick to the HIIT workouts, please. You're a good-looking silver fox, but the nutritional advice is shoddy. For what? Nearly 10 years we've been going at it, mate. God. The yin to my yang. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to try my training out, and another one in case you want to try Neutonic. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love this one. All right, bye-bye.